I thought family meant love and sacrifice. But the day I sold my car to save my mom's life, only to watch her give every penny to my brother instead, I realized I was just a disposable option. I stood there, clutching the envelope of cash in my trembling hands, my heart pounding as I handed it over to my mother. This was everything I had left, my savings, my sacrifices, and the car I once called my freedom, all gone in an instant to pay for her surgery. "Don't worry, Mom," I whispered. "I'll figure things out." But what she did next shattered everything I believed about family. A few days later, I found out the truth. The money I bled for, cried for, wasn't spent on her treatment. Instead, it went straight into my brother's hands, the golden child who had never lifted a finger for anyone but himself. And when I confronted her, she didn't even hesitate. "He needed it more than you did." Those 6 words cut deeper than any betrayal. At that moment, I realized I had never really been her priority. I had always been second choice. But not anymore. I stared at my car one last time, running my fingers along the hood as if I could somehow absorb the memories it held: late-night drives, road trips with friends, the freedom of being able to go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. But none of that mattered now. Mom needed surgery, and money didn't just fall from the sky. The buyer, a middle-aged man with a firm handshake and a sympathetic smile, handed me the check. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "You seem attached to this car." I forced a smile. "Yeah, it's just a car." But as I watched him drive away, taking a part of my independence with him, I felt a lump rise in my throat. I didn't allow myself to cry. Instead, I headed straight to the bank, cashed the check, and went to the hospital. Mom was resting when I arrived, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for mine. "Rachel, sweetheart, you don't have to." "I already did." I placed the envelope in her hands. "It's all covered now. You don't have to worry about anything." Her eyes welled up with tears. "You sold your car?" "Of course, Mom. What else was I supposed to do?" I squeezed her hand, hoping she understood that no material possession mattered more than her. She pulled me into a weak hug, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe. I had done the right thing. No regrets. That night, I walked home in the cold, hugging my arms around myself. Public transportation would be my new normal, and the idea of waiting at bus stops late at night wasn't exactly thrilling. But if it meant saving my mom's life, then so be it. What I didn't know was that my sacrifice would mean nothing in the end. Because just days later, I'd discover that every single dollar of that money I had bled for, cried for, was gone. And it hadn't gone to her medical bills. It had gone to my brother instead. But before I tell you the moment that shattered everything I believed about family, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to sacrifice something for someone, only to wonder if they even appreciated it? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Let's build a community of people who understand what it means to give everything, and sometimes get nothing in return. And if you've ever fought for something you believed in, hit that like button, because trust me, this story is just getting started. A few days later, I returned to the hospital, expecting relief, maybe even gratitude. Instead, I walked into a nightmare. Mom wasn't in her hospital bed. The room was empty except for a nurse changing the sheets. My stomach twisted. Had something happened? I rushed to the front desk, my pulse racing. "Where's my mother?" The receptionist gave me a calm, practiced smile. "Oh, she checked out this morning. Her bill was settled, so she was discharged." I blinked. Settled? I gave her the money for that, but I wasn't told she was leaving today." "Well, the hospital received payment, so I assume she went home," the receptionist said with a shrug. I should have felt relieved. But something felt off. I called Mom as I hurried toward the exit. She answered on the second ring. "Oh, Rachel. I was just about to call you. I'm home now." "You're home? Why didn't you tell me?" She hesitated. I didn't want to bother you, sweetheart. You've done enough already. There was something in her voice. A stiffness. A hesitation. I shook it off. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe, after everything, she just needed space. But that gnawing feeling in my gut didn't go away. I took the next bus to her house, and the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The house was too quiet. No medical supplies, no home care setup, no signs that she had just been discharged from a serious hospital stay. Instead, she was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea like nothing had happened. And across from her, lounging like a king in his throne, was my brother, Matt. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice careful, controlled. Mom's smile was too bright. Too forced. "Oh, sweetheart, come sit. We were just talking." Matt leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Hey, sis. You look stressed. Everything okay?" I ignored him. My eyes locked onto the envelope sitting on the table, the envelope. My envelope. The money I had bled for. It wasn't until that moment that I realized, Mom wasn't sick anymore. She looked fine. Better than fine. Her cheeks had color. Her hands didn't tremble. A cold wave of realization crashed over me. "Where's the money?" I asked. Mom's smile faltered. "Rachel, listen. Where is the money?" Matt chuckled. "Relax. No need to be dramatic." Mom reached for my hand. "Sweetheart, Matt needed help. His business." I jerked my hand away. "His business?" My voice cracked. "You mean the same business he's been sinking money into for years? The one he refuses to let go of even though it's a failure?" "It's not a failure," Matt said, rolling his eyes. "It is when you use my money to save it." I shot back, my face burning. Mom exhaled, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Rachel, I know this is hard for you to understand, but your brother is struggling. He needed the money more than I did." I could barely process what I was hearing. "More than you?" "Mom, I sold my car to pay for your surgery." Mom winced. "I know, and I love you for that. But the hospital had financial aid programs, sweetheart. I didn't want to burden you when Matt was." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Let me get this straight. You took the money I gave you for a life-saving surgery, and gave it to Matt, so he could keep chasing a business that's already dead?" She swallowed hard. "Rachel, I thought you'd understand." I laughed. It wasn't a real laugh, it was sharp, bitter, hollow. "Understand?" "Understand what, Mom?" "That no matter what I do, I will never come first? That no matter how much I sacrifice, you will always choose him?" Matt scoffed. "Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic." I turned to him, my vision blurring with rage. "You sat there and took the money, knowing exactly where it came from? Knowing what I had to give up?" He shrugged. "Yeah, well, life's unfair. You've always been the responsible one. You'll be fine." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Mom reached for my hand again, her eyes pleading. "Please don't be mad, sweetheart. We're family. We have to help each other." I pulled away, my voice shaking. "No, Mom. I helped. I sacrificed. And you let him take everything from me." She started to cry, but I didn't care. I had never felt so small. So unimportant. And at that moment, something inside me broke. Because I finally understood. I would never be enough for her. I never had been. But I was done trying to be. I stood there, fists clenched, heart pounding, as my mother wiped away her tears like they were supposed to fix everything. Like her regret, her excuses, could somehow erase the betrayal. But they couldn't. Rachel, please, she whispered, reaching for my hand again. I didn't mean to hurt you. I yanked my hand away. You just what, Mom? You just thought I wouldn't notice? That I'd be okay with you throwing away everything I worked for? She flinched. It wasn't like that. I thought you'd understand. You've always been the strong one. I knew you'd find a way to manage. But Matt, he needed it more than you did. Those words again. Those same 6 words that had haunted me since the moment she said them. Why? Why does he always need it more? My voice cracked, but I refused to let the tears fall. What has he ever done to deserve this kind of loyalty from you? What has he ever given up for this family? Matt scoffed from across the table, lazily swirling the coffee in his mug. Oh, come on, Rachel. Are you really going to throw a tantrum over a few $1,000? You'll make it back. You always do. I turned to him so fast he actually leaned back. You think this is about the money? I seethed. I could have given that money away to a stranger on the street and felt better about it. But I gave it to Mom. Because I thought, my voice broke for just a second before I forced myself to keep going. I thought she needed it to stay alive. And instead, she handed it to you so you could, what? Buy another second chance? Matt rolled his eyes. It's called an investment, Rachel. Something you clearly don't understand. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I understand perfectly. I invested in Mom's life. You invested in your ego. Enough. Mom finally snapped, slamming her hands on the table. I won't have you two fighting like this. We are family. We have to take care of each other. I shook my head, disbelief and exhaustion settling deep into my bones. No, Mom. I take care of you. I always have. Matt just takes. She gasped like I had slapped her, but I didn't stop. I have worked since I was 17 to support myself so I wouldn't be a burden on you. I moved out, got a job, never asked you for a dime. But Matt. I turned to my brother, eyes burning. He drained you dry, over and over again, and you still choose him. Matt smirked. Well, maybe if you were a little more likable, she'd choose you too. The air went still. For a second, just a second, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Then, without thinking, without planning, my hand flew out and smacked his coffee mug off the table. It shattered against the floor, coffee splattering across the tile. You're unbelievable. My voice was low, shaking with barely contained rage. Mom jumped up, panicked. Rachel, stop this. But I was already done. Done talking. Done fighting. Done caring. I grabbed my bag and turned toward the door. Where are you going? Mom's voice was frantic now, like she could feel me slipping away. Home, I said, my voice flat. Oh wait, I don't have a home anymore because I sold my car to keep you alive. She flinched, guilt flashing across her face. Rachel, please, we can fix this. I shook my head. No. You broke this, Mom. And I don't think you even realize how badly. I looked at Matt one last time, expecting him to gloat, to smirk, to throw out some final snide remark. But for once, he was silent. Maybe even he could tell something had shifted. I wasn't playing the game anymore. I walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I stepped outside, the cool evening air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Freedom. But this wasn't the end. Because I wasn't just walking away from them. I was walking toward something better. I didn't go home that night. I walked. Block after block, street after street, my legs carrying me forward while my mind raced in circles. I told myself I was done. I had slammed the door, walked away. But the truth? It still wasn't over. The betrayal sat heavy in my chest, like a weight pressing down on my lungs. I had spent my whole life proving my worth to a family that never seemed to see it. And now, when I had finally hit my breaking point, I wasn't sure what to do with the pain that followed. By the time I reached my apartment, exhaustion had taken over. But as I fumbled for my keys, my phone rang. Mom. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the decline button. But something in me hesitated. I took a deep breath, then answered. Rachel, her voice was soft, almost cautious. Can we talk? I let out a bitter laugh. Haven't we already done enough of that? Please. Silence stretched between us. Then, against my better judgment, I sighed. Fine. The next afternoon, I found myself standing outside her house again. It looked the same as it always had, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't here to beg for her love anymore. I was here for answers. She opened the door before I could knock, like she had been waiting. Come in, she said quietly. I stepped inside, but I didn't sit down. Say what you need to say, Mom. My voice was steady, but my hands clenched into fists at my sides. She swallowed hard. I never meant to hurt you. I scoffed. You keep saying that like it changes what you did. Tears welled in her eyes. Rachel, No, Mom. For once, you listen. My voice trembled, but I didn't stop. Do you have any idea what it felt like? To know that I wasn't even your second choice? That I was just convenient? She shook her head, covering her mouth with her hand. I worked my entire life to be the daughter you wanted. To be the responsible one. To be the good one. And you let me believe that it mattered. But it didn't, did it? Because at the end of the day, no matter what I did, no matter what I gave up, you were always going to choose him. That's not true, she whispered. Then prove it. I took a shaky breath. Tell me, Mom. If I hadn't confronted you, if I had never found out, would you have ever told me the truth? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. And there it was. The final nail in the coffin. I let out a sharp exhale. That's what I thought. She reached for me then, but I stepped back. No. You don't get to comfort me. Not after this. Tears streamed down her face. Rachel, I don't know how to fix this. You can't. My voice cracked, but I forced myself to meet her eyes. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. So that's it? Her voice trembled. You're walking away? I swallowed the lump in my throat. No, Mom. You walked away first. I'm just finally following your lead. She sobbed into her hands, but I didn't move to comfort her. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one trying to fix things. I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, I hesitated. One last question burned in my mind. If it had been Matt instead of me, if he had sold his car, given up everything for you, would you have given his money away too? Silence. I closed my eyes, already knowing the answer. And without another word, I walked out. I didn't cry when I left my mother's house. I thought I would. I thought the weight of everything, the betrayal, the realization that I had never truly been seen, would crush me the moment I stepped outside. But instead, all I felt was a strange, quiet numbness. I walked away, one step at a time, leaving behind the years of trying, of hoping, of believing that if I just did enough, I would finally be worthy of her love. That night, I lay awake in my tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling. The city outside was alive, cars passing, voices echoing in the streets, but inside, it was just me and the silence. For the first time in a long time, I had nothing left to give. And maybe that was a good thing. Over the next few weeks, I forced myself to move forward. I worked extra shifts at the hospital, saving up every penny. I took the bus without complaint, telling myself that soon, I'd have a car again. One I bought for myself. And slowly, the pain dulled. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a familiar name. Mom. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to let it ring until it faded into silence. But something in me, maybe habit, maybe stubbornness, made me answer. Rachel? Her voice was small, hesitant. I just wanted to check on you. I'm fine, I said, my voice neutral. A pause. Then, I was wondering if you could come over. Just to talk. I hesitated. Why? She sighed. It's Matt. My chest tightened. What about him? He's in trouble again, she admitted. He asked me for money, and I don't have anything left to give him. I closed my eyes. Of course. Of course that was why she was calling. So let me guess, I said bitterly. Now that he's drained you dry, you want me to step in? No. No, sweetheart, that's not, she stopped herself. Took a shaky breath. I don't know what to do. I thought if I gave him what he needed, he'd finally stand on his own. But he keeps taking. I let her words settle between us, the irony almost laughable. Now you understand, I murmured. She let out a quiet sob. I was wrong, Rachel. About everything. And I don't expect you to forgive me. But I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see you now. I swallowed hard, fighting back the sting behind my eyes. I had spent my whole life waiting for those words. But the thing was, I wasn't the same person who had begged for them. I'm glad you do, Mom, I said softly. But I can't fix this for you. Not this time. Another pause. Then, a shaky exhale. I know. It was the first honest thing she had ever said to me. And as I hung up the phone, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for her love. I was finally loving myself enough to walk away. A year passed. 12 months of silence. 12 months of rebuilding. At first, the absence of my mother and brother felt like a missing limb, an ache I couldn't quite shake. But as the months stretched on, something strange happened. The ache faded. The space they left behind? It wasn't emptiness. It was peace. I worked hard, saved every extra dollar, and finally bought myself a new car, one that belonged only to me. I found new routines, new friendships, new joys that weren't tethered to the weight of obligation. And for the first time in my life, I was free. Then, out of nowhere, an email arrived. The subject line made my stomach twist. From Mom. Subject, I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. Rachel. I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything. But I need you to hear me out. It's about Matt. I exhaled sharply. Of course, it was about Matt. I nearly closed the email right then and there. But something in me, curiosity, maybe, or just old habits, made me keep reading. He lost everything, she wrote. The business collapsed. He's in debt, deep debt. I don't have anything left to give him. And now, he's blaming me for not being able to bail him out again. I clenched my jaw. Rachel, I see it now. He never needed help, he just needed someone to take the fall for him. And I let him. Over and over again. I let him drain me dry. I let him drain you dry. And now, when I have nothing left, he's gone. He won't even return my calls. For the first time in my life, my mother finally knew what it felt like to be discarded. I just wanted you to know, she continued. Not because I expect you to fix it. But because I needed to tell you that I was wrong. About everything. I see it now. And I'm so sorry. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. A part of me wanted to feel vindicated. A part of me wanted to let out the bitterness, to tell her, I told you so. You picked the wrong child. But I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. She had finally learned the lesson I had spent my whole life trying to teach her. And that was enough. I didn't respond right away. Maybe I never would. But as I closed my laptop and grabbed my car keys, one thought settled in my mind. This was never my burden to carry. And for the first time, I was finally letting it go. This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about self-worth. It's about realizing that love isn't proven through endless sacrifice, especially for people who only take. Rachel's journey shows us that sometimes, walking away isn't giving up, it's choosing yourself. And that's a choice no one should ever feel guilty for making. Now, I want to hear from you. Did this story resonate with you? If you liked it, drop a 2 in the comments. If it wasn't your cup of tea, type 7, I welcome all opinions. And if you've ever had to stand up for yourself, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this, because trust me, we have plenty more to share.